My wife described it as almost like the Wizard of Oz, where you felt like the house was being lifted up. It almost felt like a mini tornado.
Good evening, and first at 5, the cleanup continues from a powerful winter storm that killed at least 5 people, downed hundreds of trees, and knocked out power at the peak to more than 200,000 homes and businesses. Tonight, thousands of people are still in the dark. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko, and power companies have brought out-of-state crews in to help get those lights back on. Cale Williams is off Southwest Canyon Road in Portland. Cale, one of many neighborhoods there that's still impacted. What are folks out there telling you?
Now, David, I've talked to folks here in the West Hills and in Washington County, and they are nearing the end of their 3rd day without power. For some folks, that's been little more than an inconvenience. For others, it's been a very big headache. And for one woman that I spoke to, she was forced to flee her home to take refuge in a hotel.
The power goes out a little after 2, and I hear 2 big booms. And then I found out that a tree had gone down by the golf course.
Pamela Bell Medley lives outside of Hillsboro, and the road to her house almost always floods when it rains. She knew when the lights went out that they wouldn't be coming back anytime soon.
It's one of the challenges of...
And that made things complicated. Bell Medley is the full-time caregiver for her adult son, Raymond. He has a rare genetic disorder and autism. Staying in a cold home with no lights was not an option, so she booked a nearby hotel.
He's having a rough time staying in a hotel. He needs to be... he needs hot water, light. He doesn't understand this.
They were part of roughly 6,500 PGE customers who remained without power as of Thursday afternoon. The utility has 550 people out working to restore power, and they've gotten to most of the larger outages, but the smaller ones can take longer.
Yeah, there's our house.
Michael Bergman, who lives in Portland's Southwest Hills, was still without power on Thursday morning.
You can see the damage.
But he had bigger concerns.
Then all of a sudden, a huge wind. We could just feel the wind. We had a big Douglas fir that some branches started flying off like spears.
5 huge branches ripped off a red cedar in his front yard, landing on his roof and puncturing holes in several places.
My wife described it as almost like the Wizard of Oz, where you felt like the house was being lifted up. It almost felt like a mini tornado.
Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it was a close call.
If someone was at our front door, it would have been devastating.
That's the roof. But this shows him cutting it and it coming down. It's amazing.
Bergman and his wife have been keeping warm with a gas fireplace and using camping equipment as they begin working with their insurance company to get their home repaired.
We were very lucky.
Power might not be restored until the weekend.
For Bell Medley, though, she's frustrated by how long it's taken PGE to restore service, and she's worried for how it's affecting her son.
He's basically so confused. He gets extremely stressed. I'm trying to make it an adventure for him. I'm not sure how successful I am, but I'm trying.
Now, I checked, and it looks like there's still about 3,700 people without power, but that's down from more than 8,000 when I checked this morning. And the lights here on this street where we are in the Southwest Hills came on within the last hour or so. When I talked to PGE, they told me that they had every crew possible out working around the clock to get all power restored to as many people as quickly as possible. They did say, though, that for some of the hardest to reach folks, the lights may not come back on until Sunday. David?
All right, some progress, but it could still be a while. Cale Williams in Southwest Portland. Thank you, Cale. Speaking of big trees, Southwest Jefferson in downtown Portland is back open tonight after a tree crashed down Tuesday morning. Portland Parks and Rec cleaned up the mess outside the Portland Art Museum. Officials say there have been at least 120 reports of downed trees in the Rose City alone. A reminder, you can call 503-823-TREE if you spot one that's come down. And with holes in the roof, burst pipes, and damaged vehicles, a lot of people have been on the phone with their insurance companies hoping it is all covered. Evan Watson joins us now. And Evan, as I like to say, hope is not a strategy, but you've been talking about the number of claims, also trying to get some tips from folks so they don't have to foot the whole bill themselves.
Yeah, David, and I was one of the people with our crews out there seeing some of this damage this past week from the winter storm. So really, when it gets down to it and you're covering the wind and the ice and the water damage throughout this recent storm, electricity might be one of the first things to be restored for most people, not all, as Cale just shared, but other issues can take longer and can be tough to navigate.
There's the immediate reaction when a tree falls onto power lines or a home. just as we were talking, as you were driving by, it all came down onto the street right here.
And then there's the follow-up. What do I do next?
As you can see, it's all tangled up in those lower lines there, so is it going to cause more of a problem?
Corey Knapp wrestled with that question during the storms this past week. Some homes were spared from large trees falling on them. Others, not so much. You can ask any insurance company, they'll tell you this storm caused massive damage. State Farm Public Affairs Specialist Amy Harris explains.
27 states and 31,000 overall claims that we've seen the past week. Oregon alone, we've seen over 700. That's with both auto and home claims. A lot of damage. We're seeing a lot of wind damage, a lot of water, frozen pipes that have burst, trees that are down.
And it's not always a straightforward answer to who's liable and who needs to make the call, unless you can prove some type of negligence.
Insurance is kind of funny with trees because if your neighbor's tree falls on your fence or your property, you're responsible for that, not your neighbor.
Harris says your first call should be to a home or car insurance agent. Don't jump to action just yet.
Keep receipts, document everything that you do. Also, don't pay for anything up front. Make sure you're reaching out to your agent, you find out exactly what is covered with your policy.
Then she has some recommendations when selecting a contractor. Ask around for references and check contractor licenses and certificates of insurance. Insist on detailed written estimates that show the cost, labor required, and estimated time of the work. Check any potential warranty and watch out for conditions that would void it. And of course, you can check reviews or formal complaints filed against any contractor. Lastly, Harris says the best way to be prepared for a future claim is to assess the value of what you have ahead of time.
Key things that we like to remind people to do is take a home inventory. So that's just, simply walking around your house with an iPhone, a pad of paper, just documenting what you have, the value of everything that you have, so that if it does need to be replaced or you do need to file a claim, you know exactly what it was that you had.
I talked with Oregon's Department of Consumer and Business Services today to get some more information. They say it's still just a little too soon for them to have complete data on the calls they received as a result of the storm, but they should have that information early next week. So we'll get that update for you. David?
Still some good advice there to make your life easier after the fact there. Thank you, Evan. Let's talk about the nonprofit Blanchet House, which had to reinforce the glass on a door today, not because of storm damage, because a guest shattered it with a brick. Organizers say problems like this are becoming more common in the Old Town Chinatown neighborhood. Blanchet House points to factors like terrible weather, homeless camp sweeps, mental illness, trauma, and substance abuse. There are a lot of them, all playing a part. We are less than 3 days now until the new year, and with the flipping of the calendar, typically comes some new laws. One of them in Oregon is going to shift the authority to designate speed limits on our roads away from the state and instead let cities make some of those decisions. Mike Benner explains why in some spots it could actually make streets safer.
Since the start of 2022, more than 65 people have been killed on Portland streets. That's the most in decades. And even more people have been injured in crashes. Hannah Schaefer of the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
We have seen yet again another tragic year of fatalities and serious injuries on our streets.
One would argue that lowering speed limits might very well save lives and make streets safer. But here's the thing, changing speed limits is no easy task. As of right now, that authority lies with the Oregon Department of Transportation and a handful of traffic engineers.
We have 5 people for the entire state, which, as you can imagine, creates a bit of a backlog when it comes to requests from cities and other local jurisdictions about speed limit changes.
The process Matt Noble of ODOT is describing is about to get a whole lot easier thanks to a new state law.
It's going to, provide local governments with the authority to set their own speed limits, which should very much speed up the process, make it more effective because they know their local roads best.
Beginning January 1st, Oregon's 241 cities, as well as Multnomah and Clackamas counties, can begin applying for the authority to designate speed limits in their respective jurisdictions.
Having local authority over speeds is really, really crucial when we're trying to lower speeds and create safer conditions around the city.
Schaefer says PBOT has yet to identify specific streets or even high crash corridors in need of immediate speed limit changes.
We are really, though, excited about this opportunity and doing the necessary paperwork to get that full authority from the state.
And perhaps there's no better time for this than now, as a record number of people are either dying or getting injured in crashes on Portland streets.
Speed continues to be one of the key factors in those fatalities and serious injuries.
It's worth mentioning ODOT is not completely washing its hands of speed limit oversight. While Oregon cities, as well as Multnomah and Clackamas counties, will now be able to handle speed limits in their jurisdictions, ODOT will continue to manage speed limits on state roads. I'm Mike Benner for KGW News.
And as 2023 quickly approaches, some people are preparing to celebrate with fireworks. Mean Gene Fireworks opened up at Camas today. A reminder, they can only be legally used in some communities during certain hours on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and both sale and use are entirely banned in some spots.
They usually have a good selection at a good, decent prices, so it's always my first stop.
All right, Oregon also has restrictions. Make sure you know what's allowed in your area before you light up the sky. All right, some quick safety tips from the Longview Fire Department here. 1, always have a bucket of water, easy access to a garden hose. Another option. 2, make sure there is a responsible adult. In 2018, more than a third of injuries in fireworks involved kids under 15. 3, of course, be aware where you're setting off fireworks. You want to be outside, away from buildings and vehicles. Many more safety tips for you at mylongview.com.